Hey all, here at OS Reviews, you're watching our video comparison between the original Xiaomi, Huami, Amazfit Pace and the newer Pace 2 or Stratos. You may be wondering, is it worth the extra cash for the newer Pace 2, or should I get an upgrade if I already have the original? And we'll be discussing those points in this video. So first, let's talk about the specifications. It seems like on paper, not too much has really changed. We still have the same 1.34-inch display on the newer model compared to the original. It's the same size with the same lip on the bottom with the same resolution. Both displays are made out of e-paper, which is this transflective material that has a backlight when you're in the dark, but when you're outdoors, it remains highly visible, just like on e-ink. So if you've used a Kindle or an e-reader, you know how this is hugely beneficial compared to a traditional LCD or AMOLED, just because it's always on and it's very energy efficient as well as visible. So that is a huge plus. Otherwise, both watches feature Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. Since it's a running watch or a sports watch, you can log those statistics and sync it up with your phone later on. Both watches also run on a very similar version of an operating system that's been custom designed by Xiaomi. It's based on Android OS. Otherwise, if we take a closer look at the design of the watches, we can tell that the second generation, or the Pace 2, is slightly larger than the first gen because it has a slightly larger bezels taken up by these tiny accents for these minutes and second hands. And overall, it gives a slightly different look. The original seems a little bit sleeker and smoother and more like a round pebble, whereas the newer one looks more professional. It looks more expensive, more like a business grade timepiece that professionals would want to pick up and use. The original also had a red watch strap that was, again, emphasizing more of the sports and fitness aspect of the watch versus this one, which is completely black and more discreet looking. Otherwise, the extra bulk comes in handy by giving you two more keys on the right, one for going up, one for going down. So if you're selecting things in menus, it's slightly easier to use for precision if you don't want to use the touchscreen display. We can also notice that the display on the second generation version is curved. It's using a curved Corning Gorilla Glass screen that looks very luxurious and also feels great when you're swiping between different menus versus the original, which was using a completely flat display. Furthermore, the crown key on the original was one of my least favorite parts because it was off-centered and it was very small at this weird angle that made tapping it kind of difficult, to be completely honest, and that means that waking up the display was oftentimes a little bit tedious versus this one, much larger keys, so even if you're wearing gloves, it means that selecting things is much easier. Battery life on both watches are also largely the same. We have access to the same 280 milliamp hour capacities that will last you for roughly 7 days on a single charge. Technically rated at 5 days if I have all the wireless options turned on, but if you have all the wireless options turned off and you're using the eco mode, it can stretch as long as 10 days before you need to recharge it. Both of these are pretty impressive statistics considering the Apple Watch can only last about a day or a day and a half before you need to recharge it again. We also have optical heart rate sensors on the back that can also do continuous heart rate tracking. A difference here is that the newer Pace 2 also is made out of this carbon fiber material that again gives it extra strength and a slightly more premium look compared to this one, which is made entirely out of plastic, and we both have ceramic bezels surrounding the sides for some extra kind of shininess from the design perspective. Taking a look at the software, we both have the drag down notification shades that gives us the battery information, time and date, weather, as well as the brightness of the display, connection status, and go into advanced settings, which allows us to take a look at battery, as well as Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth information. You can tell that both devices are about the same in terms of their smoothness, since they really have the same processor as well as the RAM configuration underneath the hood, and they have very similar menu interfaces. I can also swipe from the edges to go out of these pages respectively. Going over from the edge also takes me into some of the other apps, such as weather, as well as more specific fitness activities. What is different, however, is that on the first Pace, you can see there's a vertically scrolling list of apps that I can then go into for, let's say, a specific sport, a walk, a run, or a jog. And the same thing goes with many of these other apps. I can also scroll up and down to access some more advanced settings, whereas on the Pace 2, there's no longer kind of vertically scrolling apps. All of the icons are in this flat layout, which is a bit more consistent with the overall UI. And you have a few more pages, extra pages for extra apps. You can also turn some of these apps and pages and hide these pages from view if you don't use them using the companion app on the smartphone. So that's one difference. Otherwise, as far as most utilities are concerned, you'll have access to both of them on these watches. So there's access again to weather forecast. You also have access to a daily overview of steps and activities and sleep. On the edge here, we also have heart rate data. Here we have our music player, which is playing back music and the 4 gigs of built-in storage on both models. On the edge here, there's an alarm clock. On this is the Alipay for mobile payment. This is the compass. So you can see some slight differences in how they are, again, laid out in the sequence, but otherwise they are very similar. And next, we also have the stopwatch. Here we have our sleep. And here we have our training center. So in terms of how much activities we want to do or reach in terms of our goal, I can set up a plan and it will try to notify me to reach that plan within the week or the month. And that's more or less it for the first generation Amazfit watch. So again, not quite as few panels that you can play around with. This is the last page. Whereas on the Pace 2, afterwards, we still have a few other panels for music. So this is actually an FM radio app. It's exclusive to China at the moment, but using the companion app, you can actually download particular segments of radios and push it over to the watch, which you can then listen to using a Bluetooth headset. We also have a few other kind of pages just exclusively for setting up other sports activities, timers, and there's also the Xiaomi Smart Home page, which is a new feature on the Pace 2. So if you're invested into Xiaomi's other smart home appliances like light bulbs or speakers, this allows you to use your watch, and as long as it's connected to the internet using Wi-Fi, you can now turn those other lamps and speakers on or off and use this as a remote control, which is a pretty cool and neat idea. And this is a feature that you won't get in the software of the original Pace, but otherwise more or less the same. The Pace 2 does support, like I talked about, a few extra kind of sports activities. There's 11 types of activities, and the biggest enhancement here is waterproofing. So if you are a swimmer, especially if you swim for longer durations of time, or if you're diving into let's say deeper pools of water, then this will allow you actually to have a few other modes for tracking kind of water movement. Whereas on this one, it's a bit more simple. This also tracks swim, but it's not quite as advanced in terms of the software, and it's not as waterproof. It's still IP67 certified, but it's not up to 5 ATM, so it can only be in a lighter pool of water for a shorter duration of time. So that's mostly the differences in the software. I would say it's quite minor. Obviously, one difference here is the Pace 2's menus and everything are fully printed in Chinese at the moment, but you can tell how they've been basically translated over to English on the international version of the original Pace that I have here. Some new kind of features to very quickly point out: I can also lock the touchscreen instead of waiting 20 seconds for it to go inactive by putting my entire finger or hand over the panel and using the ambient light sensor that automatically locks the display. This is just activated because I tilted the watch forward, but again, you can very easily now lock the touchscreen just by putting it on top of the surface. It's a trick borrowed from the TicWatch 2 that I really liked. You won't get that feature on here, so if you want to lock this screen, you actually have to wait 20 seconds or tap on the crown key for a second time, which locks it. So there's a slight difference there. Now, on this newer watch, the crown key still activates the touchscreen, but if you tap on it again, it no longer will lock the screen. It acts as an OK key instead. So when you are in a settings or in something that you can scroll up and down with, you can see some of these activities. Again, more of these swim type of activities than you'll find on the original. If you want to go into a specific mode, let's say the swimming one, I can tap on the crown key to act as OK. So it's now a selection key. Furthermore, long holding will also take you back home. So they've added a few other controls which are different compared to the original. Overall, I think that these controls are slightly more ergonomic and they make a bit more sense, especially on a sports based watch where you'll be doing outdoor activities, and it's a bit more rugged in appearance. The keys are larger and easier to hit, so on and so forth, and navigation is slightly easier for quick shortcuts and for times where you don't have access to the touchscreen and you still want to go back and forth between these panels. I can also long press to go back home, and I can also long press on the bottom here to pull up the notification shade, vice versa, long hold here to bring up this page here. So there's a few more smart kind of modes that they built into the software on the Pace 2. When it comes to customization, these will actually use the same exact watch band size, so you can actually swap the watch bands for one another. Furthermore, if you already have accessories for the original Pace, like a leather strap, you can also fit it onto the newer one without any problems. So no complaints there. When it comes to customizable kind of watch faces, what's interesting is since Xiaomi is still kind of developing a different app for the Pace 2 than the original, it doesn't have quite as many watch faces at the moment compared to the original Pace. On the original, you actually have already around 20 to 30 watch faces, but on this one, it's only limited to around 16, 15, something like that. So I can long press again on this main screen, just like on the original Pace, to change the watch face and cycle back and forth between my options. You can definitely notice some moments of hesitation. Again, both of these aren't the most powerful smartwatches on the market. 512 megabytes of RAM is still fine for a smartwatch, but we're seeing more and more smartwatches these days with maybe 1 gig of RAM. So going forward, we would like to see Xiaomi again improve on some of the internal specs. When it comes to the accuracy and performance, both of these watches are very similar. So we talked about how battery life is already pretty much the same, about 6 days on a single charge, around 8 days to 10 days if you have all the wireless options turned off and the display is dimmed. When it comes to the GPS signal, they were both very strong, so tracking your movement outdoors, I had no problems testing it out in the Seattle region. When I was running outside and syncing the data with my phone, it tracked a very similar path. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connection with your phone are also quite consistent. For Bluetooth, you'll get roughly 10 meters or 33 feet of connection with your phone, and both of them allow you to are compatible with the smart lock feature on Android, which means that the smartphone's display will remain on, or at least the phone will remain unlocked as long as you're wearing your watch and the phone is close enough to your body, which is a pretty cool feature. So all those things are still the same, and since they are smartwatches, you can still control notifications from the watch. So you can see things like text messages, WeChat, Twitter, Facebook messages as they pop up, and you'll also get notifications if you've been sitting for too long. So sedentary reminders, continuous heart rate tracking, all of those things are, again, pretty accurate. Sleep tracking is also fairly accurate. It's not something that you have to tap a separate key, as long as you go to sleep naturally, and it will detect the movement, and if your body isn't moving quite as much, it thinks that you've gone to sleep, and it will log that and sync it up with the phone the next time that you're connected using Bluetooth. So at the end of the day, I would say that the Stratos or the Pace 2 is definitely an improvement over the original. I feel like it has a slightly more professional and classy look, as well as a stronger, more rugged and durable design, and that will definitely please business professionals as well as sports enthusiasts alike. The keys have been significantly improved. They're much easier to hit now, and the reamped kind of gesture interface where I can use this to select things, go up and down, and then turn off the display just by using this motion, all works very well. The ambient light sensor is great, and the curved display also makes navigation just feel a little bit more smooth and ergonomic. However, when it comes to the core functionality, the internals and processing, as well as the basic apps and things that you can do on both, there's not really a huge difference. So if you do want to save a few bucks, you can still get the original and know that you're getting more or less the same smartwatch inside that performs the same activities and has the same overall accuracy and battery life. And that will save you, again, quite a few bucks, because the original is now priced at roughly $100 versus a newer one, which is $200, going up to $300 if you get the deluxe version with a leather strap and sapphire glass. So it's considerably more expensive, and it's mostly for cosmetic and hardware differences on the body, and not really in terms of the chipset. If you're an owner of the original, and unless your battery performance is degrading or it broke, something like that, I don't think there's a huge reason to upgrade necessarily to the Pace 2 at the moment, because again, feature sets as well as GPS, optical heart rate sensor, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 512 megabytes of RAM has all remained untouched. So that's more or less it as far as our comparison between the original Xiaomi Huami AMAZFIT Pace and the Pace 2, aka the Stratos. Be sure to stay tuned for more reviews as well as comparisons coming up soon. Thanks for watching this video here at OS Reviews.